Welcome to the Voice of the 𝗵𝗵 podcast. This is 𝗵𝗵 miniedu series where we talk about interesting topics around payments, fintech, and financial services in general. Hello, welcome to this episode. My name is Panagiotis Kriaris. I'm an ambassador of 𝗵𝗵, and today we're going to be talking about the European payments landscape.
What will be covered in this episode?
Now, I'm going to be talking about the structure of the landscape, then around the challenges, and then I'm going to be giving you my take around the 7 main initiatives that are shaping the European payments as we speak. Starting from the landscape, I would say we are now at a crossroads with a record number of moving parallel parts. So to understand those, I would say it makes a lot of sense to go and understand the landscape on the e-com side and on the POS side. So if you look at the e-com side today, in Europe, you're going to see that digital wallets are basically the leading payment method. In 5 markets, you see they are the leading payment method in Denmark, in Germany, in Italy, in Spain, and the UK. And as we speak, they account for about 30% of the transaction value. The cards are still very strong. I think if we put together the credit cards and the debit cards, they account for 40%, roughly speaking, but this is something the share will be decreasing. You have global wallet brands like the Amazon Pay, Apple Pay, Google Pay, and PayPal that are major players in Europe. And you also have some local players, for example, Mobile Pay in Denmark, 𝗵𝗆 in Finland, 𝗵𝗆 in Norway. And then, of course, you have account-to-account payments being very important. So they are the leading method in some countries. So let's say Finland, the Netherlands, Norway, Poland, and Sweden. And especially in the Netherlands and in Poland, you have Ideal and you have Blik dominating the market. Now, on the POS side, what we see is that debit cards are preferred by a large extent over everything else. So I think they account for 40% of the transactions as we speak, which is nearly double the share of the credit cards. The digital wallets are also growing in Europe, and I think it's impressive that they're going to be doubling. So I think nowadays their share is around 13%, and that's going to grow to 27% in 3 years' time. And of course, you have cash, which is still very significant. But it used to be, before COVID in 2019, it used to be 40%. Now it's 20%. So we see a decline of cash only because of all the other developments that I was talking about. Now, what is the challenge? Europe has always had a disproportionate dependence on US payment rails. Despite of the existence of a single euro payments area, which we call SEPA, EU payments are, as we've seen before, fragmented across national markets. And dominated by the likes of Visa and Mastercard, US origin, and of course at the same time, all the other players that we have are of American origin. So, I mentioned before PayPal, Apple, Google, Amazon. So this dependency has always been an issue for the Europeans. I think lately, with all the macro developments that we have been seeing, it has become much more important. So, for example, if you see what has been happening over the COVID, what has been happening in the US with the presidency of Trump, digital wallets and other account-to-account methods growing in significance throughout the globe. And then, of course, global payments becoming increasingly complicated. There is a need, which is much more acute than it used to be in the past, for sovereignty in terms of payments. Which is why we are now having, I have summarized all the major developments that we see in Europe nowadays in 7 main developments, and I'm going to be explaining how these developments are taking place in parallel. So the first one, which is addressing Europe's effort to fix this challenge I was talking about before, is the instant payments. So there is a new instant payments regulation in Europe, adopted very recently by the European Council, and it tries to basically homogenize the environment across Europe. What does it do? It basically makes instant payments compulsory, right? And just to give you an example why this is important, I think the European Commission estimates that on any given day, almost 200 billion euros are locked in transit in the financial system, which they call the payment float. So because of the fact that payments are not instant as we speak. We have this 200 euro payment flow on a daily basis. So imagine if you could release this. So that's the first initiative, which is very, very important. And instant payments are becoming compulsory across Europe. Now, the second one and the third one, it's basically there are two initiatives trying to address the fragmentation that we see in Europe. So we have the so-called European Payments Initiative, EPI, which is basically an effort to have a pan-European wallet. So the company has acquired the Dutch and the Belgian origin, so they have Ideal and the 𝗡𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗍 recently to do so. And it's basically you find many banks and PSPs behind them. So they are now launching. They're basically live in a couple of major European markets in Germany and France. And as I said before, the ambition is to build a wallet. That's a private initiative because, as I said before, the banks and the PSPs are behind, to build a wallet that is going to be covering Europe across e-com, across POS, and across a number of use cases. And they're using Ideal and 𝗡𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗍 not to start from scratch, so to start from leading players. Then, of course, you have the digital euro. So it's which is nothing else than a European digital currency, what we call a CBDC, issued by the central bank. And it's the digital form, in essence, of a fiat currency, which is in this case is euro. So it's essentially e-money issued by a central bank that can be used to make payments in the same way that we use cash. There is no ultimate decision yet that this will go ahead. It's going through phases. Now I think we have finished a 2-year investigation phase, and we have entered this preparation phase that is going to also last about 2 years' time. But basically, if this will happen, it will be a big change because you're going to have digital euro not replacing cash, but basically coexisting with cash and complementing, I would say, cash. And it will be basically distributed by commercial banks. So again, this is going in the direction of having a pan-European financial services market across Europe. Now, something very important is that we are also having a regulation on creating a digital identity wallet. Again, same here. It's an app allowing citizens to digitally identify themselves and manage identity data and official documents in digital form. You're going to have many wallets in each member state with the same technical standards, recognized throughout Europe, and it's going to be voluntary. Right now, what's happening is that we are in a kind of a pilot phase with some pilots, but I think there is an estimate that this is going to be rolled out, and 80% of the citizens in the EU will have adopted this by 2030. Now, the next one that is very, very important is the so-called, we used to have PSD2, which is the second payments directive. This is now being replaced by a third directive, which we call PSD3. And this time it's supported by a payments regulation, which is called PSR. Now, these are legislative changes that are the main target. It's a very complex legislation that the main targets are to improve open banking, enhance competition, merge GMIs and PIs under one regime, combat fraud, and improve access to cash. So that's going to make a change also in terms of open banking, and also there is a change in terms of having the PSR, which is going to apply across all member states without any need for individual adaptations. Now, the next one, which is very very important, is what we call 𝗪𝗐, which is basically the effort, the acronym is Financial Data Access Framework, and it's basically the effort of the EU to go in the direction of open finance, putting at the center data, which is a global trend. Two things here that are very, very important. The first one is that customers are getting control over their financial data. And second of all, which is very important, is that financial institutions are now having a business case so they can actually monetize their data through open banking and the transition to open finance with many more additional use cases. And the last one, but it's also very, very important, is what we call 𝗂, which is the SEPA Payment Account Access Framework in Europe. And it's basically a scheme for open banking, which is a necessity if open banking can replace credit cards at some point in the future in Europe. Why? Because credit cards and the big schemes have spent decades in developing all kinds of use cases around the credit cards, let's say chargebacks, disputes, exceptions. So now you need a scheme to be able to build all these rules around the open banking framework so that they can also provide an alternative. I mean, of course, chargebacks, because open banking is based on SEPA rails, is not an option, but everything else are rules that you're going to be seeing building on top of 𝗂. And this is also going to work very closely with the likes of 𝗪𝗏 and with the likes of PSD3 that we've seen before. So these are the main 7 initiatives that I think are reshaping the European payments landscape as we speak. There is a strong correlation between all of them. So, for example, 𝗂 is building on the PSD2, and then, of course, you have 𝗪𝗏 building again on PSD2. You have 𝗪𝗏𝗍 and the digital euro somehow having some overlaps, and then, of course, the digital identity. So, all very, very important, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Whoever wants to, compete and understand what's happening in the European payments landscape, it's essential that they understand these parallel trends and initiatives. Thank you.